Hey Greg, I want to become an Olympian like Clara Hughes. You want to be my coach?
I run awkwardly, I cycle slowly, and I skate poorly.
Hello and welcome to the Grand Parade Podcast. It was a whirlwind in politics last week, but Halifax has found itself in an eddy of news in an otherwise insane news cycle. In international news, which we have to talk about unfortunately, the United States is destroying their economy and upending the world economic order that was established after World War II. There's not a lot of certainty here, and things can and likely will change, maybe even between Friday when I record this and Monday when this goes live. And even though almost everything about the tariffs is federal politics, there is one thing worth mentioning as it pertains to Halifax's City Hall. The tariffs are going to spike the cost of automotive transportation. That's even more than the 40-some-odd% that automotive transportation has increased since 2020. Federally, the Prime Minister and most major political parties are promising to save the auto sector, which is about to face massive job losses. However, Halifax just passed a budget that was, ostensibly, about affordability. Since automotive infrastructure is causing huge financial stress to the city, and automotive ownership causes huge financial stress to households, if Halifax's City Council has good leaders, we will see them start to move away from the status quo in transportation policy and infrastructure choices, now that Trump's tariffs have forced us to reckon with the high cost of mindlessly following American car-first transportation policy choices. But in municipal politics, it was a really slow week. On Wednesday, the Board of Police Commissioners met for a relatively routine and mostly administrative meeting, plagued with technical issues. In January, the Board of Police Commissioners elected Gavin Giles as the chair of the board, and then, a month later, the city didn't renew his term and dropped him as a commissioner. This is likely due to Giles' inability to avoid putting his foot in his mouth, which he did when he did things like tell the public that their feedback could safely be ignored because it was only intended to, quote, titillate and annoy, end quote. But we can only speculate. He was replaced by new commissioner, military Dr. Vincent Beswick Eskenlar, who was sworn in on Wednesday. Commissioner Greg O'Malley is now the chair of the board. Councillor Tony Mancini started the meeting by asking for 2 written reports from Wednesday's agenda to come to the board's next meeting as presentations. In those presentations, the board will learn that the team working on the Wortley report have finished a policy for race-based data collection and have sent it to the province for approval. The board will also get a presentation about how the police deal with hate crimes. In a written report submitted to the board on the agenda, the Halifax Regional Police have submitted their new extra duty policy, and it's a C+ policy at best. There is no limit on how much cops can overwork themselves in a month, as long as they leave enough time in between shifts. And if we're looking for low-hanging fruit to detask the police, the extra duty employment policy is a good place to start looking for cuts. Like, do cops really need to be the ones doing traffic control for commercial filming locations? As an aside, this week I'm planning a field trip into the weeds to see if commercial filming bylaws really only allow movie shoots to block traffic for 3 minutes at a time. Anyways, for the Board of Police Commissioners meeting itself, the bulk of the meeting was taken up by presentations from the Elizabeth Fry Society and the Halifax Regional Police Victim Services Unit on intimate partner violence initiatives. The latter presentation took up over an hour of the meeting. This was a long presentation by Dolly Mosher, so I'm using a clip from a shorter version of her presentation given to a different committee the next day, on Thursday. And even though it's a shorter clip, it's still a bit of a long clip because Mosher and her team do a lot of important work. Here's what she said.
I'm the coordinator, of course, the manager of the unit, and we have a business support person who does our admin and our crisis. He typically is the first person that someone in crisis would speak to when they called our phone line. Matt has a counseling degree. He spends lots of time on the phone with victims who are calling looking for information on their police case. As I said, sometimes in crisis, so he kind of talks them down, stabilizes them a bit, and makes the proper referrals to where they need to go. And then at some point, we'll transfer them over to one of us. We have a sexual assault caseworker. She specializes in all of our sexual assault files. Allie works in the office 4 days a week. And on the 5th day, she is over in our integrated criminal investigation division, working in the SATE unit. we find that having her integrated right into that unit 1 day a week provides officers with the opportunity to have a caseworker that can speak with victims who are coming in to give a statement, who are, usually traumatized after their statement or need to take breaks during their statement because sometimes they're 6 or 7 hours long. So having Allie in the unit is a great opportunity because there's someone there who can speak with them in a trauma-informed, uses a trauma-informed approach and certainly provides them with all the resources and referrals that they will need going forward. Our domestic violence case coordinator works specifically on high-risk domestic violence cases, cases that are designated high risk. In the province of Nova Scotia, we have the high-risk case coordination protocol, and all police agencies across the province use the high-risk protocol. Once a case is designated as high risk, our domestic violence case coordinator will coordinate all of the service providers that will be needed for that one specific victim, and will support her through whatever. And I say her because 97% of our cases are with women. So she will support her throughout, post-incident and onwards throughout the case, as long as it takes to go to the court section. And we have, we're very pleased and proud of our domestic violence offender navigator. We are the only police agency in Nova Scotia, or in Canada, to have a position within a police unit that actually provides services to offenders. And the way that it works is back in 2018, we were provided with a domestic violence police officer that works solely in our unit, works solely with the offenders in that unit. And what his role was to call the offender and talk to them about, do you understand what your conditions are? Do you understand, how you're supposed to access services? Do you understand all of those things?
In listening to Mosher give this presentation 2 times last week, what is most striking is how much time, effort, and money goes into mitigating the violence of a small percentage of men. More than anything else, this presentation highlighted for me the need for programs like the Youth Advocate Program. The Youth Advocate Program was expanded during the budget playoffs a few weeks ago, and that program, which costs a couple $100,000 a year to get kids out of gangs and into sports, has the added benefit of boys meeting positive male role models like coaches, which helps boys break free of the cycle of violence as they grow into men. It goes without saying that getting boys to kick balls with their friends after school is way cheaper than convening a table of high-ranking decision-makers to deal with men who didn't get to kick a ball after school and grew up to continue the cycle of abuse. Also at this meeting, Dr. Amy Ciliano, the head researcher of the HRM's Department of Community Safety, was supposed to give an update on the public safety strategy and crisis response, but this was deferred due to the absence of key staff. By law, the board has to send one of its members to the Nova Scotia Association of Police Governance Board. Commissioner Becky Kent was chosen for this role. On Thursday, the Women and Gender Equity Advisory Committee met, and they also got a presentation from the Halifax Regional Police's Victim Services Unit, which you heard earlier. Whoops. They also got a presentation from GEO Nova Scotia. GEO, which stands for Getting Everyone Online, told the committee that, like most everything else in life, access to the internet is not equitable, with women, the old, and the poor having less access to the internet than men. The only other meeting this week was also on Thursday, where the Envrionment and Sustainability Standing Committee met to get 3 presentations. The first was from Drs. Catherine Brown and Jennifer McClellan, who urged Council to start refluoridation in the HRM because it saves a lot of time and money. For example, most of the pediatric surgeries in the HRM are dental surgeries, and there's a huge wait list for these operations. In the early 2020s, the City of Calgary decided to let fluoridation lapse instead of fixing the infrastructure needed to add fluoride to the water. After a decade of costly and negative health outcomes for the poor kids of Calgary, the city is now paying a premium to reinstall the infrastructure needed to add fluoride to their water. The good news here for Halifax is that Halifax Water has just announced that it is restarting fluoridation of city water ASAP. The bad news is that one of the members of the public who showed up to speak to the meeting claimed that fluoride made her daughter a bit squirrely, and so she argued that since fluoride in the water made her daughter squirrely, and it mainly helps the poor and black people in Nova Scotia, it's not worth spending money on. The casually implied racism and classism aside, that speaker also spoke in favor of the other two presentations, which were both about green space in the HRM. The first was from Karen McKendry, who warned councillors that Clayton Developments were proposing a massive subdivision the size of New Glasgow for a part of the HRM that's currently wilderness next to the Sandy Lake Regional Park. She explained that the proposed development is in a provincially designated special planning area, and, should it get built as proposed, it will likely cause extensive flooding a la Bedford 2023, due to paving over a huge stormwater catchment area. We'll come back to land use, but McKendry also argued that preserving the wilderness is vital for biodiversity, when she said that,
but the Halifax Green Network Plan, one aspect of that plan was computer modeling about how wildlife moved through our city. And as part of that, it showed where are the wildlife corridors, areas that are still intact enough that wildlife can move through a city, which we want, right? Because they provide important ecosystem services that keep our city running. 3 of those vital corridors run through the Sandy Lake Sackville River area because it's so big and still intact. And that's a bottleneck for the Halifax, like the Chebucto Peninsula. So it's a rich area for wildlife movement if we keep it intact.
Gillian Ramsey also presented to the committee on the Green Network Plan. We're going to close out this episode on the Green Network Plan because it's Halifax's best/worst strategic plan. As you likely know, the city of Halifax was formed by amalgamating a bunch of smaller municipalities in 1997. Since these smaller municipalities weren't being built to connect to each other, between these former cities are large chunks of pristine wilderness. This is especially true the further you go from the city center, as even individual rural exurbs are isolated mini-suburbs with one connection to a major arterial highway. Major arterial highways are massive financial burdens and destroy wilderness, so it's not ideal to connect these isolated communities or subdivisions with roads. So how, then, does the city save its wilderness while increasing connectivity for residents and keeping taxes low? Well, the answer is, in 2018, the city came up with and passed the Green Network Plan. But since then, the city has done absolutely nothing with this plan. This inaction was brought up by Ramsey during her presentation, when she suggested over 30 fixes to the city's Green Network Plan. When Councillor Catherine Morst asked about these fixes and why the city hasn't done anything yet with the plan, the city's head of planning, Jacqueline Hamilton, said this.
The Green Network Plan is certainly called for in our regional plan, so there is a strong connection there. We are actively, you'll notice in our business plan for the upcoming year, we will be presenting a progress report to Regional Council on the progress of the Green Network Plan and how we are tracking. And I know we have our program manager for the Green Network Plan, David Hodd, here in the audience today. So he's actively working with community stakeholders and other partners to advance the work of the Green Network Plan.
However, in 2022, when this committee got a presentation on the Green Network Plan from the Ecology Action Center's Courtney Dunsby, she told the committee this.
The problem statement here today is that there is no legal framework for protecting natural assets in HRM.
And Dunsby's co-presenter in 2022, former HRM solicitor Mary Donovan, told the committee this.
In the current charter, you've got a section that says that when you adopt new regional policies, which is the process currently underway, it has to be accompanied by the associated land use bylaw provisions that would implement those policies. And what our observation is, and it's certainly not always the case, that's definitely, but generally, we're not seeing land use bylaw implementation provisions that accompany a lot of the fabulous environmental policy statements that you find in the 06, 14 plans and in the Green Network Plan. We're just not seeing them.
In plain English, the issue with the Green Network Plan is twofold. The first is that even though the plan's intent is good, the legislation itself is very weak. And this is for another 2 reasons. The first is that when the city passes a major strategic plan, like the Green Network Plan, it is supposed to update its processes and bylaws to ensure that the new strategic plan is implemented by staff when staff go about their daily work. This step did not happen with the Green Network Plan. But even if the city did change the bylaws so that the Green Network Plan was implemented by staff doing their work, the instructions given to staff are incredibly weak. To oversimplify, if the Green Network Plan were a strong piece of legislation, the instructions to staff would be things like city staff shall implement the Green Network Plan when approving new developments. Instead, the Green Network Plan legislation says things like city staff may implement the Green Network Plan, or city staff shall consider the Green Network Plan when approving new developments. So even though the intent of the Green Network Plan is good and the plan itself is phenomenal, the weak legislating is a big reason why even the quote-unquote high priority Green Network Plan connections haven't seen any progress since the plan was first passed 7 years ago. There are also Supreme Court and Tim Houston-shaped problems with the Green Network Plan. First, the Supreme Court problem. When the city first designated the Blue Mountain Birch Cove Lakes Wilderness area as a nature reserve, the Annapolis Group developers sued the city. They argued that they owned the land, and because they owned the land, they wanted to sell it to someone else in the future to develop. But now, the future owner of the land can't develop it due to the nature reserve designation. The city argued that designating land use is its only job, as legislated by the HRM Charter. Sometimes, when councillors exercise their democratically and charter-granted powers to designate land for a specific use, like a nature preserve, it prevents landowners from doing things, like selling the land as a speculative development investment. Somehow, the city lost this slam dunk case, and now the city may be forced to pay Annapolis Group for their speculative lost profits. This, in turn, means that anyone who owns land designated for the Green Network Plan use could, in theory, sue the city for the same reason as the Annapolis Group. The only saving grace here appears to be that the Green Network Plan is so weak that it's not actually having an impact on the real world and is therefore not cutting into developers' profits. I just want to throw a caveat here, though, that the staff report on the Supreme Court decision has not yet come back to council, but is expected at some point in the relatively near future, and that should throw a lot more clarity on the Annapolis Group decision. Anyways, the second problem is the Tim Houston problem, and that is that the provincial government could protect the city from legal challenges like the Annapolis Group's lawsuit. But the city first requested that protection in 2018, and here's Halifax's Chief Administrative Officer, Cathy O'Toole, telling council in October 2024, 6 years later, where the city's 2018 request is at.
In response to Councillor Lovelace's motion, or question she'd asked about why haven't we written to the province before. The conversation has occurred, and it is originating from our list of current legislative requests we have with the province. So in August 2018, the council approved requesting amendments to enable the Green Network Plan. And those amendments to the Halifax Regional Municipality Charter have not been done yet, but the discussion around constructive taking, it has been raised as part of the discussion on those amendments.
The Green Network Plan is a crucial plan to save Halifax's pristine remaining wilderness, connect communities in rural HRM, and generally just make Halifax a better place to live. And even though the Green Network Plan cuts through places that are now provincially designated special planning areas, those special planning areas just put permits at the top of the pile for evaluation. Those permit applications still need to conform to the land use bylaws as set by council. But unless you write your councillor and tell them to change the bylaws to protect the Green Network Plan, and write your MLA to tell them to give the city the legal protection it needs to develop the Green Network Plan, we're about to lose large swaths of the wilderness from Salt Marsh to Sandy Lake to development. And once that wilderness is gone, it is never coming back. But that was it for council last week, and so that'll do it for me today. Hopefully in the near future, I will have some information on my new publication, but the best place to stay up to date on what's going on with me and my City Hall reporting is to follow me at Land of Sticks, wherever @ are bought and sold for free, which right now is Blue Sky at Land of Sticks, and Instagram, where I will probably once again start doing City Hall Reels, but until then, it is a great way to get notifications on when my work comes out. Also, if you're listening to this podcast on your phone, there's a bunch of things you can do on your phone. Like, rate, review, subscribe, text your mom. Be like, hey, Mom, did you know you could listen to this great City Hall podcast? You should do it. text your mom right now and say, hey, Mom, I love you. And then maybe also recommend the show. But anyways, that'll do it for me today. Until next time, bye!